Hi everyone, welcome to my channel if you're new here. Welcome back to my channel if you're a returning viewer or subscriber. Today's video is going to be my wrap up for the month of May, so talking you through all the books that I read in May. In the end I only got to 4 books, a little bit of a disappointing reading month. I did have like quite good reads, real mix of things, but I did hope to get to a lot more than this. I think 3 of the 4 were actually on my TBR for May. A TBR jar picked out my reads for May, and 3 of the books that I read I believe were in that video. I really wanted to get to the other 2, and there were other books I had on my radar as well, which I didn't get to in the end. There are a couple of reasons for why May didn't go to plan. The first thing is that on the 30th of May I had a really big hit to the head, which meant that I had to have the skin on like the top of my head like glued up and everything like that, and it put me out for a couple of days and just really threw me off because I was like immediately dealing with the effects of that on like the first of the month. The second thing is that I went away. I went to California, a massive trip. I brought a book with me but I barely got any reading done at all, and I feel like just getting out of the routine of reading really throws me off and like makes me a little bit slumpy, just because it's something that I'm not used to doing, is picking up a book after not having done it for like even like a couple of days. So getting back into reading post that trip was kind of difficult. But having said that, I did get some really good books, and I'm excited to particularly share the first one with you. So without further ado, let's just get on to the video. So the first book that I read, and my favourite book of the month, was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I wanted to buddy read this with someone in real life, which is what we did, and we had the best time. We both really loved this. We actually ended up giving it the same rating, which I'm going to make you wait for till the end of this review. But yeah, Serpent and the Wings of Night, this is a really big like TikTok famous book. It blew up around the same time that Fourth Wing did. I felt you were either like a Fourth Wing girl or you were a Serpent and the Wings of Night girl. I am both. I did actually enjoy this like more than Fourth Wing, which is kind of crazy to say because I really love Fourth Wing. But yeah, I just thought this was a really kind of unique, interesting concept, and I feel like that's what really kind of won it over, as well as my emotional connection to the characters. So in this book we're following Araya. She's the adopted daughter of the Vampire King, but unlike her father and literally every single other person in this world, she is a human, which means that she lives in fear her whole life because obviously vampires prey on humans. And in order to make Araya's life not just like a living nightmare, what she does is she enters this thing called the Kujari, which is a set of kind of like trials and contests in order to win a wish from the goddess of this land, of this world, I guess. And Araya wishes she can go through this whole tournament and then win and request to be a vampire, would be to be changed into a vampire by the goddess. It is possible for humans to be turned into vampires anyway, but it's a very dangerous thing. I think you have like a 30% chance of actually surviving it, and her father doesn't want to take those risks, and Araya's also wary of them. So Araya enters a competition. She's been training for this thing her whole life, so she's very skilled kind of hunter despite being a human. And while she's in the competition, she meets a bunch of really scary vampires, but she also meets this guy called Rain. Rain is a vampire. He's got a really big backstory, but one thing is that he is part of a different kind of vampire species. I can't remember how many there are, but there are several vampire clans that are in constant competition across like centuries to become the ruler. So right now it's the Nightborn vampires, and that is what Araya's father is, Vincent. But Rain is part of a different clan, and you kind of discover the history of that and everything like that. The world building in this is fantastic. I'm really burnt out by the kind of competition trial trope, the kind of Hunger Games-esque event. This didn't feel like that at all, especially after reading Powerless and that being just like a copy paste of the Hunger Games. This one really didn't make me think of that at all, and simply because of how interesting the world building was and how complex it was. But you're also able to understand everything. I definitely kind of kept track of it, and I didn't feel like this was a massive effort. I just felt kind of in awe of how fleshed out the world was. I tabbed so many things in this book. I loved every single second of it. On top of that, this is like an almost 500-page book, and it has brilliant pacing. There was not a single moment in this where I was like, can we just like get things going a little bit? Or I felt like a little bit bored or anything like that. It was just so engaging and entertaining. Rain is not the usual love interest. He's not like the dark, broody kind of character. I think he's actually like a redhead. But he's really well kind of characterized, and you find out so much about him throughout the book, and his character's really well developed. Not only is he like literally lovely, but he's also so well suited to our main character, Araya. Also, this book is enemies to lovers, but it's actually enemies to friends to lovers, and I feel like the friends part made all the difference in the relationship and in terms of how much I kind of rooted for these guys. They really become like besties before anything happens romantically. There's also tons of pining, so if that's your thing. The ending was literally like whiplash. There was so many plot twists. It was like a massive plot twist, and then I was like reeling from the effects of that, like in tears. And then you'd be like, wait, hang on, but actually this thing's happened. But it wouldn't like cancel out what happened You know when like that horrible like device where a main character gets killed off and then 5 seconds later they bring them back to life? It wasn't like that. How they were handled and how they made sense for the world and what was possible within it. Everything just blew my mind. I'm so excited to go into book 2. This series was actually originally self-published and they're in the process of traditionally publishing it now. This is the first book in a duology and the second book comes out this June. On June 6th, which is literally in a couple of days from now. I'm really excited to pick it up. I can't wait. I'm in the middle of reading Air of Fire by Jemima, so I have to wait till that's done before I pick it up, but after that I'm hoping to get to this second book ASAP because I just love this so much. So yeah, my rating overall, 5 stars, you can tell. Fourth Wing was like a 4.75, but I rounded up to a 5 because it didn't feel as low as a 4.5, but it also was not like that kind of gut-wrenching 5-star read. This was like 5 stars bordering 6. I really highly recommend this. And this is coming from someone who in general doesn't love the super hyped up kind of romantic-y books. I guess aside from Fourth Wing, but like there have been a number of them I really disliked. But this one really worked. I wanted to keep the kind of romance trend. Thankfully I had one on my TBR from May. So I picked up Done and Dusted by Lyla Sage. This is the first book in a little cowboy romance series. It's about these cowboys, they all live on a ranch, they all work on this ranch. And the ranch is like such a big piece of land that it actually has like little houses on, as well as the main big house. So each of the people who work on the farm are actually able to live on the land. So everything feels very self-contained and just a good, like wholesome, kind of almost small town cowboy vibes. I decided to pick this book up in May because I'm in the middle of reading the Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver. That's like the ultimate cowboy romance book series, but I'm up to book 3 in that, which is very long and has significantly smaller font than the previous books as well. So I thought while I was hesitant to continue on with that series, but I was in the mood for this kind of vibe, I would choose this one. So yeah, this is an incredibly short book. It is actually just over 300 pages. We're following the daughter of the man who owns the ranch. She's called Clementine, but they call her Emmy in this book. She obviously grew up on the ranch, but she went away because all she ever wanted to do was get out of this small town and to become a racer, horse racer. So she does this thing called barrel racing, which is like a timed horse racing thing. I don't know. I'd never even heard of it before this book. But she's actually injured. She falls off her horse. As well as having this injury, she gets such a fright from that experience that she doesn't really want to go back to the sport anytime soon. So what she does is she returns home to kind of like be around people she loves and also to reevaluate her life and what she wants to do from here. But while she's back home, as well as reuniting with her 2 brothers and her father, she reunites with this boy called Luke Brooks. Well, he's a man. I don't know why I said boy. He was a family friend. He was best friends with one of her brothers and he had a very kind of difficult upbringing, which meant that he spent a lot of his time on the ranch with her and her brothers. I really liked Luke's backstory. I really liked seeing his family dynamic and like the difficult thing he came from and what he found within this family of ranchers. I liked Emmy's character too. I did think this was incredibly insta love. That's my kind of biggest complaint with it. I know that these characters had a history, but it was always her having a crush on him never noticing her because he was like her older brother's best friend. Literally the second Luke sets his eyes on Emmy again, he has this massive crush on her and things just happen like almost instantly from there. And both characters feel exactly the same way about each other, which I feel like was a little bit unrealistic, especially given the amount of time passed. Overall, I kind of found it hard to know exactly how I felt about this. There were some moments that were like as cute as the moments that were just kind of like meh or like a little bit cringe or a little bit just like silly and ridiculous. I didn't think this was nearly as well written as Chestnut Springs, but I also think that you've got to kind of like understand that this is a debut. Elsie Silver didn't start with the Chestnut Springs series. She'd written like an entire series, if not more, before that. So I can kind of forgive that a little bit, but I just think that it's impossible to not be comparing this book to Chestnut Springs if you've read Chestnut Springs, because it's basically the same idea. And while Lyla Sage mentions like a bunch of people who've influenced her, like other romance authors, she never mentions Elsie Silver, and I think that's a deliberate choice because it's very similar in many ways, but I feel like in all the really good ways, except for maybe the family aspect, Chestnut Springs is just better. So overall I gave this book 3 stars. I'm definitely interested enough to read on. The second book came out this year and I've heard kind of good things about it and I'm interested about the kind of plot of that one. I don't know, I don't think this is gonna be my favourite and I probably will eventually unhaul it down the line, but yeah. This was also a gift, so thank you to the person who gave it to me. I finished that and I was like in despair at the not great writing. So I picked up a kind of lit fic, non-fic book in The Cost of Living by Deborah Levy. This is the second book in the Living autobiography series that she's written, which are kind of these 3 almost like memoirs, but the key point is that she's written them while she's like very much like in the midst of life. They're almost like a kind of anecdotes, little moments throughout her life that have kind of shaped her or give you an insight into who she is and how she works and everything like that. Deborah Levy is a writer as well as writing this series. She also writes fiction books, literary fiction books, and you definitely get an idea into her writing process as well as who she is as a person. I read the first book in this series this time last year, Things I Don't Want to Know. I think I kind of enjoyed these books on par. They're very, very different from each other. Even though this is the second book in the series, most people start with this one. I think just because this cover is stunning with this Jean-Luc Godard picture on the front. But I actually read these in the correct order, so I wanted to see if that made any impact. I still would recommend that you start with this one because I think you're going to want to read the whole trilogy if you're into any of these books. But I don't think there's much reason, except for like the actual chronological order of Deborah Levy's life, because this one touches on some of her childhood, whereas this one is much more about her like adulthood and her kids, especially post-divorce, what that was like. This one is much more about why Deborah Levy writes, her process and her love for it and everything like that. This one is much more about her kids and her husband. It is just a general memoir, but it has a lot to do with womanhood and kind of the female experience, particularly the female experience as a working woman but also as a housewife, and like trying to balance those two things. But it's much more kind of nuanced and complex than just that. It's definitely not just touching on all the things that are like incredibly obvious about feminism or about being a woman. I always think it's a shame when a woman writes a highly feminist read. The majority of her readership are women. It's missing the point, trying to help explain the female experience. I feel like that's the main problem with feminism, is that it's trying to convey this kind of disconnect that people who are not women cannot fully understand and fully comprehend. But I really felt this read was actually aimed at women, both as kind of like an encouragement but also for something to relate to. So Deborah Levy was like, this is how I feel and I see you, because I see this experience as not just being a personal experience but as a universal one. I do think that Deborah Levy will forever be a 4-star author for me. I gave this book 4 stars. I gave the previous first book in the series 4 stars, and I gave the one fiction book I read from her 4 stars. And I feel like she's one of those authors that, while like I could rate some of her books lower, they're never going to be above a 4. I love a 4-star read. I feel really content with a 4-star read, but I don't like when a 4-star is like the highest potential that a book can possibly be rated. I don't know, I could be proven wrong, and I feel like this is difficult to explain, but that's just how I felt. And yeah, but I would highly recommend this if you're interested in any of the themes that I've mentioned, or just like little short memoir books, because I feel like these are always good in a way, just to like kind of reassure you about your own life and to inspire you in some way as well. And then the final book that I read in the month of May was Frieren. The first volume in the Frieren manga. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but you'll see it on the screen and I'll have the full name of it listed down below as well. This is my first manga. I saw this on Cass's channel, Cassandra Lynn Reads. Maybe I'm totally lying. I'll have her like username on the screen, but also have her link down below as well. She read this and she really loved it. It's like her current favourite manga series. I chose this because it had a really, really charming cover. I love the idea of kind of fantasy stories, like little cartoon fantasy stories. It's so cute. Anything fantasy in terms of like the kind of classic like Tolkien creatures like elves and dwarves and things like that really kind of enchants me. Unfortunately, I didn't really love this. I thought it might have just been me, but I read reviews, and from seasoned manga readers or consumers, they say that this one is a little bit odd, particularly in terms of the pacing. I love the world, I love the setting, I thought the art style was really cute, the characters are really sweet as well in terms of like the character design. And I think the main thing of this book is much more of a character study than it is anything to do with the plot. There are kind of plot events, but it's much more about the characters. I couldn't see the dialogue or the descriptions in detail because it was like in little, you know, speech bubbles, whatever, really short pieces of information. Fell a little bit flat there. It basically follows the story of what happens after a group of like adventurers get back from their mission, the aftermath of that, particularly following our main character, who is an elf, and she's traveling with a dwarf and also 2 humans. So she lives like for hundreds of years and the humans live like a normal human lifespan. A lot to do with grief and seeing like her comrades like grow old and then eventually pass on. There are a couple of lines in this that really irritated me. One of the humans that travels with them is a priest. He's not a very good priest, but every single time he says something, they're like, "Ah, you corrupt priest." But I mean, if I like search that phrase in the series, it would come up like 50 times, and I don't know, I just got kind of sick of it. I feel like his character was no more than just like a corrupt priest. I don't think I'm gonna be continuing this series. I gave it 2.5 stars overall just because it wasn't for me. There's nothing like inherently bad about it. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but that's not to say I won't pick up another manga. I'm definitely interested in doing that, and I just think I started at the wrong point, or in the wrong place. I actually own a manga volume like on my shelf, and I also am interested in various other titles. So this is not the end of me and my manga journey. I haven't fallen at the first hurdle. This Frieren one, not my kind of thing. Maybe I'd recommend it, I don't know. Go and watch Cass's video, she really raves about it, and I'm sure that if she connected with it then some of you guys might too. So that's it, those are the 4 books that I read in the month of May. We had some hits, we had some misses. I don't know, I feel like I'm quite happy with my ratings overall. I'm kind of a little bit disappointed in not having got to a lot of books, but you know, that's not what reading is about at the end of the day. You just have to suck it up. I can make June a better month in terms of my like unrealistic standards for myself. I also did have like a bunch of circumstances that affected this reading. On to better things. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you did. Subscribe if you'd like to stick around and see what I get to in the month of June. I've already filmed my June TBR. I'll have it linked in the cards and also down below if you want to check it out. Again, I let the TBR job pick my reads and I'm really happy with so many of them, so many different genres and books I've been wanting to get to for a long time. I'll see you in a couple of days for another video, but until then, have a lovely rest of your week. Sending my love to you from here to wherever you may be in the world. Bye bye.